Welcome to another episode of the Impossible Life Podcast. I'm your co-host, Nick Surface, and I'm sat across from a man who needs no introduction, the former Navy SEAL, Garrett Unkelbach. That felt very formal and good, I think.
All right, well, let's get straight to business.
Well,
we're going to skip the intro.
Yeah, we are going to skip the intro because this is a tools and tactics episode, and this is a doozy. This is something that a lot of people deal with. This is how to deal with anxiety.
It's a good tool to have.
It is a very good tool to have. It's one that I've used many times in my life and developed.
If you don't have this tool, it's like not having a screwdriver.
Yeah, and I can tell you from experience, this works. So good. First of all, G, let's get straight into it, man, and let's go to our man Webster in the dictionary, which
The one and only.
that's Webster's. that's the Webster sound effect now.
We need a new sound effect for Noah Webster.
We'll get one for him. He was a very.
We'll come back to that.
We will. We'll work on that. But okay, so anxiety, and listen to this because we're going to give Webster's definition, then we're going to give our own, and we're going to give you literally a short-term, medium-term, and long-term cure for this. We're going to talk about the cures for anxiety, how to deal with it, and we'll get to that. But we're basically going to show you what to do in the moment because sometimes anxiety comes on you, and it's like you don't need a long-term solution. You need one right then. And then we're going to talk about how to make sure that you're not the person suffering from it.
Everybody needs this.
Correct.
Everyone's had anxiety on some level in their life. It doesn't matter what you're going through. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a special operations veteran or you're a mom. Everyone deals with anxiety on some level.
Yeah, very true. All right, so here's what our man Webster said. He said he defined anxiety, and Garrett and I were 50-50 about whether this word would have existed in 1828 when he wrote this, but it did. He said it's concern or solicitude respecting some event, future or uncertain, which disturbs the mind and keeps it in a state of painful uneasiness. How true that is. It expresses more than uneasiness or disturbance and even more than trouble or solicitude. It usually springs from fear or serious apprehension of evil and involves a suspense respecting an event and often a perplexity of mind to know how to shape our conduct. Man, did he nail that.
The hardest part of the pain
is the anticipation of the pain.
And I would say also not just the anticipation of the pain, but it's the anticipation of pain will lead you into magnifying the pain.
Yeah.
And people, like, I remember sitting in the classroom before Hell Week. I remember talking with guys before SEAL training, and there's a lot of anticipation of the pain, and they're trying to. Right, I wrote blogs about this a long time ago, and we've talked about it on the podcast, right? Like, don't try to figure out how bad it's going to be. You're asking the wrong question.
Yeah.
Like, the people would ask me all the time, like, hey, what's the secret to buds? Like, how did you figure out how to put up with it? It's like, just decide that you're going to get through it. But guys would have so much struggle in trying to, like, quantify how bad buds is going to be. It's bad.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just don't try to put a number on it.
Yeah. And that's what we said. So Garrett dropped a few of our own definitions. And really, it was interesting because we put our definitions on the board first in our prep, and then we read Noah Webster's, and we're like, oh, he basically said exactly what we said, just in a much more artistic, poetic way. I mean, for us, it's the anticipation of pain. That's anxiety, and it's I don't know what to do. It's future-based pain, and I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, depression is nothing that I do matters.
Right.
And uncertainty or being overwhelmed is feeling like, man, I have a million things to do, and I'm not sure which one will have an effect. And then anxiety is just feeling like I can't do anything or I don't know what to do.
Yeah. And Garrett, in his in his usual way, just boiled this right down very simply. G, why don't you give the people the key here for how you can make anxiety grow or decrease?
You've made it 3 minutes into this episode, and let's just go ahead and drop the truth for you. Here's how if you want to increase anxiety, here's your prescription for increase anxiety. Focus on the uncertainty, right? This is guys before SEAL training. They're asking, how bad is it going to be?
Yeah.
And the reason they're asking how bad it's going to be is because they want to know beforehand. They're almost pre-deciding, well, if it's as bad as this, I think I could do it. But if it's worse than that, I don't know if I could do it.
Right.
And so they're trying to quantify that uncertainty. And the more you focus, like, no one can really tell you, like, an accurate description how bad SEAL training will be for you. Right. So the more you focus on that level of uncertainty, the greater the anxiety is going to be.
Yeah.
The flip side is, here's how you decrease anxiety, is focus on what is certain.
Yeah.
Right? Decrease anxiety by focusing on what is certain. It's not going to make the pain go away, right? But our man, Tony Robbins, why don't you just go ahead and drop this one on him, Nick?
Tony Robbins says, we don't experience life. We experience the life we focus on.
And so what I'm saying is, if you focus on the uncertainty, the anxiety will get worse.
100%.
Anxiety is an emotion. It's a feeling. And you can do things like, if you want to be mad, you can focus on stuff that'll make you mad. If you want to cry, you can focus on stuff that'll make you cry.
It's true.
And if you want to have anxiety, you can focus on things that will give you anxiety. If you are struggling with anxiety and listening to this episode, you can probably at least say, I don't want to have anxiety. And if you can at least get those words out of your mouth, I don't want to have anxiety, here's what you need to do. You need to focus on the things that are certain, right? What was certain about SEAL training was at some point it'll be over, and people have done this before.
Yeah,
that's what I focused on. I was like, you know what? I believe I'm supposed to do this. I know it's going to be bad, right? I'm not trying to avoid the bad. I know it's going to be bad. I don't need to try to quantify the uncertainty, but I know at some point this will be over, and I'll be standing among the people who completed this training. Focus on certainty, anxiety will go down.
Yeah, because the opposite of anxiety would be peace. And as my man Garrett Unkelbach says, peace comes from not from knowing what will happen, but from knowing what you will do no matter what. And that's where we talk about having like a core values-based life and having the type of confidence that you know who you're going to be in any situation. You go, okay, I don't know what the future holds, but here's who I said I'm going to be, and this is who I am every single day. Got a lot of reps in being this person, so I am already determining that no matter what happens, this is like my success cue. This is what I do, and that brings you a massive amount of peace. Now, you're talking about SEAL training for what you said. Like if it gets this hard,
let me give a different example.
Because most people listening to this will not go through SEAL training.
And I'm gonna I don't normally put like qualifiers or some pretext on the things that I'm gonna say, but I will say I'm not bringing this. I'm gonna talk about Lindsay, and I'm gonna talk about Lindsay as she prepared for our first baby and the kind of birth that she wanted to have. And I know like how you birthed your baby and all of that's like a sensitive deal for ladies.
Wow.
So I'm just gonna put this out here and say, look, ladies, this is not a judgment on how anybody else does their stuff. This is a story between me and my wife and how I helped her get through what she wanted to do.
This is like the most considerate I've ever seen you be about what you're going to say, man.
This is one of those.
Oh, it's a hot button issue. People get fired up, and they all want to tell you about what's wrong with what you're doing.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah. So, if you do things differently than I did, just hold your breath and listen to what I'm trying to tell you. Okay,
you don't miss the point because you disagree with the method.
Don't miss the point. Right. So Lindsay wanted to have a natural childbirth, and she did with Grace, she did with Trinity, but coming into the first one, she's like, hey, Guy, my husband, you've dealt with like a lot of difficult stuff before. How do I approach this?
Yeah.
Because she was like, hey, I want to do this. I'm honestly kind of afraid and scared, and it seems like a big deal. And so she read some books, and some of the books that she read like really gave her the best foundation. And I'll talk about the little part that I did. Mm-hmm. Some of the books that she read gave her the best foundation, was really talking about like what the Bible says about natural childbirth. Basically, after reading some books, she said, hey, God made me to do this, right? Which was the same as me having the belief, like I believe I'm supposed to make it through SEAL training. So she believed, like, hey, I'm made for childbirth. God designed me to do this. And then we talked about, I said, here's where, like, you're going to come to a point, right? I'd never been in a birthing room before, but I was like, here, I already know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. This is what it's like when you do something difficult. We're going to get in there, and it's going to get hard, and you're going to be in some pain, and it's not going to be over. And you're going to start asking yourself, how much worse is this going to get? And if you start asking that question, you are walking towards the quitting door. Right? What you have to pre-decide is like, hey, I'm going to make it through this, right? This is trying to get through Hell Week. I've already decided. I know it's going to suck. It's going to suck worse than I think it's going to suck. And when I think it's at its worst, it's going to get worse, right? But I've already pre-decided I'm going to get through this, and I know that I can do it, and I'll be happy with myself in having done it. Right. So when it gets to that point of saying like, oh, man, it's so bad. How is it going to get worse than this? Do not focus on that question. If you know that you're made to do this, just relax and do all that you can do to quietly move through it. Mm-hmm. And so I can tell you, like, in having the baby, like Lindsay had I watched her go through some pain, but I also watched her like relax and speak the right things to herself instead of focus on the pain, just like we've talked about on the show before. If you focus on the pain, it gets worse, right? When you're going through a bunch of pain, that's the time to zoom out, look a little bit further down the road, right? Hey, it's really difficult right now, but if I'll look down the road, this is going to help me get to where I want to go.
Exactly.
Right? So Lindsay did all this work reading some books that really helped her believe, I'm meant to go through this. And what I would say for every person who's listening to this who might be dealing with anxiety, there's some pain in your life. And if you start asking of the pain, is it going to get worse? What you're asking is, I need to know, if I need someone to tell me, it's going to get easier from here, because if it's not, I'm going to quit.
Right.
That's what you're saying when you're saying how much worse is it going to get. Stop focusing on the pain. Determine, I'm going to get through this, and then just relax and do the best that you can. It's like getting in the ice bath.
Right.
You
Exactly
can't make the ice bath not be cold. It's what's special about it.
Yeah.
But you can relax.
Yeah. That was the unlock for me with the ice bath. The only time I finally was able to start doing ice baths was when I stopped hoping it wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
I just was like, this is going to hurt no matter what. So you might as well just sit and just wait for it. And I did.
So all I did with Lindsay was just kind of mentally prepare her. There was no like Coach Garrett in the room. Right. I did all of that. She asked for it, and we did that before, and then she just did everything on her own, and I was just there with her. That's all she wanted. Right.
Yeah.
She didn't, because I told her, I said, here's what's going to happen. Right. You're going to get in the boxing ring and you get punched in the face.
Right.
And you've got to decide now what you're going to do when that happens.
Yeah, very good. All right, so let's get into what we said our cures are. So this is our how to deal with anxiety, short term, medium term, and long term. Okay, so in the short term, and if you've ever seen someone in a panic attack, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The breathing on somebody whenever they're in the short terms, it's very short, it's sharp. When you're going down the anxiety trail, you have the exact same physiological reaction. So one way that you can deal with it, if you're in the minute of like, man, I'm feeling a lot of anxiety, you dealt with this. They taught you this in the SEAL team.
This is the SEAL Big Four.
Yeah.
Visualization, segmentation, self-talk, and breath work, or arousal control is what they called it.
Right. We're definitely not going to say arousal control, but
Yeah, that's what they called it, right? Because when it is a form, it's a form of, it's not the type of arousal that you're referencing, but it is a form of arousal when you experience fear and anxiety.
Right.
That your brain is going into like a heightened state,
Right.
Right, and what you do to bring it back out of that is control your breathing.
That's exactly
right.
right.
When you are not in control, your breathing's not being controlled.
Right.
And you like get back in the driver's seat by controlling your breathing.
Yeah, and the real tip for this, and this is if you practice this when you're not anxious, it'll be a lot more natural for you. You want to breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your nose, and you want to take the deepest breath you can. And what you're going to focus on is the sound of the breath. Like when you breathe in through your nose, it's a very distinct sound when you breathe out. And what you're doing is you're focusing on nothing but the sound of it. And you need to take as many of those breaths as you can until you feel that tension, because usually there's a tension that's in your shoulders. Your shoulders will be up and you won't even realize it. When you feel that sort of like they droop, they relax, now you've settled and you've gotten yourself out of it. It's a simple tip.
Right.
You have to breathe all the time, so you don't need any special equipment to do this. You can always be like, okay, time to get some deep breaths, slow, focus on the sound of it going in and out of your nostrils. Great. The other thing, and this is such a key, and people miss this all the time, just go for a walk. Because what happens when you walk? Your breathing naturally has to change because you have to supply your body with oxygen, and you get some of that energy out of you.
I think anybody that I know that's been someone who's like fought mental health and has really gotten on the other side of it, they're all walkers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because you realize how I can think. I could tell stories about this, but I'm not going to because for brevity's sake, I will just tell you that going for a walk is very underrated whenever you're dealing with something that's causing you anxiety or you have a strong emotion. It's creating an energy in you, and if you just keep that pent up, it's going to ruminate and grow. All right, so that's the short term to get you out of the hole.
And go back to where we've talked about SEAL Big Four. I would put all of those in the short term category.
Good, very good. All right, medium term. I would say anxiety, by and large, I know there's some extreme cases, but for a lot of people, anxiety, it's like a byproduct of being too comfortable, right? Let
me say it. Nick said that in a nice way, right? Anxiety is your inability to deal with pain, and you have an inability to deal with pain because you're soft.
Right. So what you need to do is you need to start exposing yourself to some difficult and some pain. What we're not saying, don't go like start poking needles.
The more you run from pain,
right?
It'd be let's make it put it in a different way, right? If you don't like working out and you run from working out, what happens to you? Your body will apathy and you'll get weaker. And then walking around in your house and going up the stairs will feel like
harder.
A workout.
Yeah.
Right. And so the more you run from pain, everything gets harder. And the people who struggle with anxiety the most are the people who have run from anxiety, and now everything gives you anxiety.
Exactly right. And so how you could do this from a very practical standpoint, start taking cold showers. Well, for how long? For however long it takes every day. When does the water get warm? It doesn't. Right? And I'm being dead serious because, look, that's not nearly as painful as an ice bath. And honestly, it's really not that painful, but it's definitely uncomfortable. And your brain will never be like, oh, this will be awesome. And that's what you're practicing every single time is like, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to get into it. And I know I'm not going to like it, but so be it.
Essentially, it's do hard things.
Right.
And I promise you, if you'll go do something hard, the feeling that you'll have after doing that hard thing, it is the direct opposite of what anxiety feels like.
Correct. And that's why I would say cold shower is something that you can do no matter who you are, but you need to ramp up the difficulty. Garrett, we were talking about something one time, and he was saying, he said, I have no fear of pain and I don't fear death. And I was like, man, and I can't remember what we were talking about, but I remember when you said that. For me, it was like, it was one of your typical things where you're just talking about something else and you threw it out there. And I sat there and I thought, I was like, how few people can say that? But when you think about the level of preparation, really the cure is to be prepared. Because for most people, if you said, hey, here's a gun, there's a bunch of people out there with guns and they're all going to try and shoot you, that's like, people, it's lizard brain, it's oh my gosh, and they ball up and they're gone. For you, you're like, check, let's go. Why? Because you're prepared.
Because I've been there.
Exactly. Exactly right. And this is where the long-term mentality like of how to deal with it comes in. The mentality that Garrett said, where in the short term, where you don't need to ask like, hey, what if do you think it'll get this bad? That's a great mentality to have going into it. But long-term, over time, when you start doing difficult things, when you have some short-term tools and you've dealt with a few rounds of anxiety and you start doing harder things, guess what? Your mentality is going to change massively, as will your confidence, because now you know, hey, whatever the pain may be, whether it's financial, whether it's relationship pain, whether it's physical pain, when you start dealing with pain, you start developing a mindset that's hardened to it. What I'll say for myself, for whatever difficult things we've done, sometimes I'll be getting ready to do something I know is going to hurt, and I'll be like, well, it won't be as bad as the 100-miler. That's literally what I tell myself, and so I'm like, oh, whatever. And that's honestly my mindset, whatever. Because it's just like, I've done much harder than this, and I think you've done that in a much more extreme than what I have. But the point is still there. Anybody can get to that by doing repeated difficult things. You'll build up your toughness, your resilience, your resistance to anxiety. And instead of being like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do, you're just like, oh, it's just a different type of pain, and I'm good at dealing with pain. That's a game changer.
So remember, for anxiety, focus on what is certain. Don't focus on what is uncertain. And you need to continue to grow, to strengthen yourself, so anxiety will not have a grip on you. For anyone who's dealt with anxiety, just know you're not weird. Everyone deals with this. But what you do after is going to be the definition of who you are. You can let anxiety define you, or you can move on to the great life that's on the other side of your anxiety. And like our friend Morpheus says, I can only show you the door. This one is going to be up to you. You're going to have to walk through this one.